Hey everybody, Alex Kazura, SteelersDepot.com, back with some Pittsburgh Steelers draft analysis. No, it's been a little bit since our last video that was not a live stream with Dave and I, but I've been busy trying to go over this quarterback class. It's such an important one for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh looking likely, not guaranteed, but likely to draft a quarterback this year. And so I wanted to get all my thoughts on the quarterbacks in this class, the ones that Pittsburgh's been most connected to, the ones in the five pro days they've been to that have had these quarterbacks we'll talk about and give a ranking and assessment and final thoughts on this class. So, in today's video, I'll briefly go through my top five quarterbacks of the 2022 NFL draft. I'll give grades. I'll give some, good and bad pros and cons, or things I like and don't like about all the quarterbacks in this class. Also, put up some video and just some highlights and some snaps and clips of each guy. I'm not going to talk to it, and all these snaps may not be their best plays or worst plays, just some color and some video for you guys. You're not hearing me drone on and on to slideshow or just a still image. So that's the way I'll set up the video. So we'll start things off by going into my overall rankings. Here are my top five quarterbacks of this class. And on screen, you'll see the name and the ranking and the round grade. So if it's a first round grade, second round grade, third round grade. And so my top five are: number one, Malik Willis from Liberty; number two, Matt Corral from Ole Miss; number three, Sam Howell from North Carolina; number four, Kenny Pickett from Pitt; and number five, Desmond Ritter from Cincinnati. So first round grades on just two quarterbacks this year: Malik Willis and Matt Corral. Howell and Pickett receive second round grades, and Ritter gets a third round grade from me. So we'll go through these quarterbacks one by one to talk about what I like and don't like, some NFL comps, and just assessment of these prospects. Starting with Malik Willis from Liberty, my number one quarterback in this class. And I think when you look to draft a quarterback, you got to bet big. To me, there really is no such thing as a safe prospect. They all have risks, some more than others, but you want to bet on traits. You want to swing for the fences. And if you hit, you're going to hit big. And that's basically who Malik Willis is. And so, by the way, I'll also have on Steelers Depot, it went up on Monday, an article that kind of describes all this in more detail, a different way for you guys to look at it. So I'll have a link in the description there. But with Malik Willis, the upside is immense. Obviously, there's a floor and there's a risk. We talk about big arm, dynamic player, outside of structure, off script, off platform, the ability to make those wow plays. No quarterback I watch in this class made me say wow and watch back a play to dissect it, but just also to enjoy it as often as Malik Willis. You talk about the best quarterbacks in football; they can make those wild plays. The Mahomes, the Josh Allen's, even Aaron Rodgers has ability to make those really incredible high level plays. And if you want to compete and you're in a very tough AFC North with really good quarterbacks in Joe Burrow and Deshaun Watson and Lamar Jackson, you better bring a lot of firepower and somebody who's capable of matching that. So Willis, the stature of him is a little unique. He's a short guy, about I think 6'1", but he's built. He's very well built, very big lower half, huge calves. First thing I noticed about it whenever I put on the old 22 was just how big that lower half is. But certainly it's the arm strength, ability to throw off platform, throw on the run, create. Certainly made that team a whole lot better, made them competitive. They had some quality wins. They beat Syracuse in 2020. They've had some good wins, or some close losses, which of course you want to get the victory. But they were in a lot of games probably people didn't think they would be in. They won both their bowl games, put up 37 and 56 points in the last 2 years in their bowl victories. He has a good road record. He's 6-4. He dealt with a lot of pressure. Liberty's offensive line was overmatched, even in the games where the stat line doesn't look the best, like the Ole Miss game from this past year. I thought he actually still played pretty well and had a really strong second half and helped kind of begin a comeback, but just too little, too late for them. But overall, just the arm strength, the mobility. As a runner, both as a scrambler and design runs, read option, quarterback power, things like that. Really impressive, and some of the accuracy while on the run to me was really impressive. And so you combine those things, you're dynamic, you can make the plays that the other guys simply can't, and that's the upside of Malik Willis. The downside on Willis, he's streaky, he's inconsistent, he's raw. He's gonna have to sit a year his rookie season. Mechanically, he's got work to do with his lower half. He doesn't always throw with a great base. He got away with the arm strength that he had, the arm talent that he had in college. He's not going to get away with that at the next level. I do want to see him clean up some of the underneath throw accuracy. Have better throws to allow for yak yards after the catch or rack run after catch type of stuff. Have to improve his coverages and or reading coverages and post snap picture and things like that. There were some cover two hole shots they threw. He has the strength to complete those passes, but sometimes he won't see the safeties rotate. Get himself into trouble that way. Certainly, when you have a guy that can run around and move like he can, you're going to get a lot of positive plays from that. You also get some negative plays where he's literally running backwards 10, 15, 20 yards, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It worked more often than it didn't, and so you take it as the good with the bad, kind of like a la Ben, in that backyard Ben first 10 years of his career. But there is going to be some negativity with that. So just trying to get him to play within structure more is going to be important. And of course, coming from Liberty, he played some schools, but didn't not a Power Five guy, not an SEC guy, and so there's going to be some concerns about that as well. My NFL comp for him is Mike Vick. And so my overall thoughts on Willis are pretty much in line with I think what most people's thoughts are. It's just a matter of kind of what you value more and just how you prioritize what he can do. Kind of the right-handed version of Vick. And I don't know if he's quite at that elite tier runner in terms of that straight line speed that Vic is, but some of the plays Willis made is super impressive. And so big arm, mobile, electric, dynamic, inconsistent, accuracy needs some work. I mean, that's basically who Vic was. And right now, that's what I see Malik Willis. So final thoughts on him. There's a lot of it's pretty classic boom bust with Malik Willis, but the potential is really there. And I think at least in Pittsburgh, this is an overall grade, but I think he fits well in Pittsburgh because they can afford to be patient with him. They can sit him for a season behind Trubisky and Mason Rudolph, have a really good quarterback coach and Mike Sullivan, who's very disciplined, going to teach him well, and let him start in 2023. Number two on my list of quarterbacks is Matt Corral from Ole Miss. First round grade on him as well, a couple ticks below Malik Willis. Corral not built the same way, much more slight and slender frame, same size in terms of height, but just a different body type overall. Um, usually when I rank these quarterbacks, I look for that elite trait, something that really gets you out of your seat and says, "Wow, this guy does something really special you don't see from a lot of other quarterbacks in the league or in recent classes or in the class he's a part of." And to me, Corral's overall quickness and his accuracy are the best in this class. You talk about a really quick release. I watched the pro day workout. That's kind of the first time I really got good eyes on him in this process, and Daniel Jeremiah and those guys pointed it out well, and I went back on tape and saw it as well. You'll see it in some of these clips here. Just a really quick release. The ball has no drop. There is no windup. It's a kind of a lower release as well. The ball really doesn't go up above his ear, but that ball comes out really quick. And so I just think everything he does is quick, from his pocket movement to some of his reads, and that release is the fastest in this class by far. And so his accuracy too, that was the most impressive trait to me. I talk about yak throws and rack throws. This guy puts the ball on the money to hit his receivers in stride so they can get yards after the catch. I see accuracy to all levels of the field. Outside the numbers, downfield. His downfield accuracy isn't the best in this class. Probably, I think Sam Howell's downfield accuracy is better overall, but that short to intermediate accuracy is bordering on elite and among the best in this class. And so to me, that's the most impressive trait of his game. Corral is mobile, not at the Willis level, but he can extend the play. He'll kind of run the scramble, a quick slider. But I think it's certainly functional and is an asset in certain moments. I think what'll endear coaches and what I was really impressed with Corral was his toughness. And we forget about some of those intangible things. We're just looking at things like arm strength and mobility and off-platform type of throws and things like that. But are you a tough guy? Because you got to be tough to play the quarterback position. To play for 10, 15 years, to take shots, your body speed up. And this guy played through not one, but two ankle injuries his junior season in 2021 with Ole Miss. And he did not miss a single game. He would get hurt in the middle of games. He got carted off in the Auburn game, comes back, didn't play particularly well, still lost the game to Auburn. But I mean, this guy just never quit. He played through a ton of injuries, which also affected his tape. So imagine how he could have looked whenever he was healthy. You watch him earlier in the season in 2021, much better than he was, plagued by those ankle injuries later in the year. And while I would never penalize a player for skipping their bowl game, I understand that entirely. And I don't begrudge anybody who wants to skip it. I do appreciate the fact that Corral played in his bowl game, and unfortunately, he got hurt in that game early. Luckily, it wasn't as severe as I thought it would be, but it's limited him throughout this pre-draft process. But I can appreciate somebody who wants to be with their team and play out the season, something you don't see quite as often these days. So I think just there's just a toughness and intangible and leadership, standpoint, and those intangibles that are just really important and get overlooked. But I think coaches will love him because he's played through the pain, he's played hurt, and this guy just has a never say die attitude. What I don't like about Matt Corral, again, it's a slender, slighter looking frame. The offense did not take a lot of deep shots. Lane Kiffin's offense was more short, intermediate, within that 5 to 15 yard range, pretty heavy from an RPO standpoint. They use double moves to try to, create some of those downfield looks. I think he throws a good deep ball. It has good spin on it. His accuracy is pretty good overall. You just didn't see it a whole lot. Malik Willis, you saw those downfield throws a lot more. Sam Howell, you saw the downfield throws a lot more. Like I said, that release he has, it's quick, but it's also low. So when you're under 6'2", 6'1", 5/8", and you have a low release, you can get some batted passes. I didn't see it as a horrible issue on tape, but I certainly can see that being a problem in the NFL. And then some minor things in terms of ball security in the pocket. I think he has good carriage, but he had a couple of fumbles. Just overall composure against pressure. He's a little frenetic and drops his eyes a little too quick. He's not a dynamic runner. He's mobile, but he'll get you 5 yards and then slide. And there's a little bit of tunnel vision underneath against RPOs and short throws. He'll occasionally miss the underneath defender and run himself into trouble. My NFL comp for Matt Corral had a little trouble trying to find a name that I thought fit really well. Landed on Derek Carr for Matt Corral. Carr, like Corral, has a pretty quick release overall. And just to me, I think Corral is never going to be the elite of the elite, even if everything breaks perfectly for Corral. But I think he could be about a top 10 quarterback in football if things all go right the way that it has for Carr. I think Carr has a bit better arm overall, but I just think they're similar frame, similar built kind of guys, and have that quicker release. And that's kind of why I went Derek Carter as my comp for Matt Corral. So, final thoughts on Corral. Like this game a lot overall. The accuracy to me is really impressive. I think he could run Matt Canada's system to a T, and I think I certainly could appreciate. I know that the NFL and Pittsburgh would appreciate his toughness, ability to play through pain, has the mobility. I think has a good arm overall, and would be a really strong fit in Pittsburgh. Next up, third on my list is Sam Howell from North Carolina. His arm strength is it's not quite to the Willis level, but it's not too far away. And his accuracy, I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think Sam Howell might be the most accurate downfield thrower in this class, even above Malik Willis. You got velocity, you got zip on his throws. He's got the ability to make full field reads and go through progressions. There were a lot of RPOs in this offense, but I've seen him go through the whole field. His body type is interesting. He's a shorter guy, just over 6 foot, but really thickly built, 220 something pounds. He's a good runner, better than you think. He's a really tough guy. Like he will literally in college run over guys. He'd run over linebackers and DBs like that Notre Dame game, for example. I think he had a crazy rushing performance. And so you see a lot of toughness in his game, to the extent that it might be too much, where he's got to go down, earlier and not take so many shots. But he's a guy that I know his 2021 tape wasn't as strong as 2020. He was kind of really shouldering the load this past season when they lost a lot of their top weapons. Whether you talk Diami Brown, receiver, Daz Newsome, receiver, a couple of running backs, and Javante Williams, Michael Carter, all guys who went to the NFL, and so really didn't have a lot of pieces in place this past year for the Tar Heels offense. And so you saw some regression there. You saw how probably try to do a little too much, but overall, like the arm strength, love the arm strength, really, the accuracy and the toughness in which he plays. That offensive line was not very good this past year for North Carolina. He took a beating, but this guy kept bouncing back. And last thing on Howell, for all the shots he took this past season, and I know that he had some games where fumbling was an issue, the Georgia Tech game in particular, but this guy has pretty good ball security for all the running and all the big shots that he took. I think he actually takes care of the football really well, and that's really important in terms of eliminating turnovers, interception, fumbles, things like that. And so, for the beating he took, he really took care of the football. In terms of the negative, obviously size, in terms of being a really short quarterback, less of an issue these days. We've seen a lot of quarterbacks succeed despite being vertically challenged. Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray. This class is full of short guys overall. Do you want to see some improvement in terms of his post snap reads? A lot of these quarterbacks have to work on that. His accuracy wasn't quite where I wanted it to be, especially in RPOs and throws over the middle and slants and in cuts and things like that. He did have a tendency, pretty extreme tendency, to just take off when his first read wasn't there last season. Again, I think the lack of weapons probably caused him to just want to run more often than say in 2020. But he definitely uh, tried to do probably a little too much with his legs last year. It was a shotgun based offense, not a lot of under center kind of work. And while this last point will be debatable, and I understand leadership comes in different forms, he's a pretty quiet guy. He's even keeled, and that's has its benefits, but he's not a real high energy guy. And so there's gonna be some questions about the way in which he leads. Will that be effective? I like my quarterbacks to have some fire to it. You don't have to be the Baker Mayfield, which is the easy comp for him. That's not my comp for Howell, but I think you want to be a little more vocal than what Howell's known to be. My NFL comp for Hal was going to be an interesting one. I went Jake Locker, the former eighth overall pick of the Titans about a decade ago. And it's less about the career arc for Howell, but it's just the style of play reminds me so much of Jake Locker in terms of that, wasn't the biggest guy in the world in terms of height, but thickly built, fearless dude. Tried to do too much in terms of really, opening himself up to taking more hits than he needed to. That's what got Locker into trouble. A lot of injuries in his career kind of cut his NFL career short. And I think Howell will have to work on knowing when to kind of pick and choose his spots, when to get out of bounds, when to slide, when to try to make a play with your legs and take a shot. The NFL is not going to be as forgiving as the college system was. He's not going to be able to run over guys the way that he did in college. But in terms of that thickly built, big arm, fearless to a fault, I think Locker and Howell are pretty much one and the same. So overall, I like Howell. The deep ball is underrated, both in terms of the arm strength and the accuracy. He's a good runner and had a good college career. But there are going to be some questions about his overall, I think, upside and some accuracy concerns and just. But I am worried about his ability to stay healthy in the NFL. This guy took a beating in college. Some of that was because of O-line struggles, but I think he'll have to kind of change his style and mentality a little bit to last in the NFL. Fourth place, I have Kenny Pickett out of Pitt, and I know some people won't be happy with this ranking. It's a little bit lower than what I think it's the conventional ranking. A lot of people have it Willis 1, Pickett 2. What I like about Kenny Pickett, got a really good football IQ. That guy went through his, full read progressions, hitting his check down, a very good take a profit quarterback where he would go through all of his reads, and if it wasn't there, he would check it down, hit his running back, hit his tight end. He's coming from that pro style West Coast system, good coaching. His former OCs, Mark Whipple, who was a longtime quarterbacks coach in the NFL, including Ben Roethlisberger's first quarterback coach in Pittsburgh back in '04. A lot of pro style concepts. Pickett spent the most time under center of any of the quarterbacks that I watched. You saw a lot of pre snap motion and shifts and just a lot of things he'll do at the NFL level that I think he's going to be in a better place to execute day one than any other quarterback on this list. He shows good accuracy when rolling to his right, had some really good throws and touchdowns moving to his right. His eyes and feet are always connected, so that's going to improve his accuracy. He has good mechanics overall from that standpoint. He's a competitive guy. He's a tough guy overall. He's mobile enough, again, like Corral, where it's not super dynamic, but he's going to be able to extend the play and, again, roll out to his right. And, it's certainly more than functional for what the NFL is going to require him to do. It was good to see him be healthy for 2021. Had a big season in part because of it. Good demeanor, good personality, leader, captain. Everyone says all the right things and positive things about Kenny Pickett, and it certainly all kind of came together in 2021 for Pitt. They had their first 11-win season since 1981 when Dan Marino led that team. So, he was helped. He was able to turn around that Pitt program into a big time winner this past year. What I don't like about Pickett was I couldn't find that physical trait that really got me excited. The arm strength is average overall. He's not going to be able to make all the throws. Some of the crossbody stuff and off platform throws are going to be tougher for him to make. But what actually surprised me more about Pickett, because I think the knock on him is that, physically he's not the most impressive guy. That there were some more, intangible type stuff that people don't talk about as much that he'll have to work on. I thought his pocket presence needs improvement. He'll drift too often. He'll reach the top of his drop, and then he wants to go backwards and get more depth or try to not climb and hitch as often as he should. And so that's going to cause more problems in terms of making those throws tougher when you don't have a big arm overall and you're drifting and getting depth. It's only going to compound the problem. It's going to make it harder for your tackles to block. It's going to invite more pressure overall. He did have some issues with those post snap rotations. It was one, I think it was against Virginia Tech where they did a late rotation to cover two and never saw the safety and easily picked him off. And so that's something he'll have to work on as well. He is older. He's going to be 24 in June. That's not a big concern for me because quarterbacks can hopefully play till they're, in their mid to late 30s. So you can have that guy for 10, 15 years still. But it is something to note. The last thing on Pickett, and I know it's the most common complaint or concern with him is the hand size, 8.5 inches, 8 and 5/8 at his pro day. I'm not as concerned about the hand size as I am just the carriage of the football. And I think there is a little bit of them going hand in hand. But when you watch him navigate and run in the pocket, he'll put that ball down low and away and it'll kind of swing. And so it's very easy for him to fumble. And when you already have small hands to begin with, you're going to increase that risk of fumbling even more. And there were multiple examples on tape of him fumbling because he's letting the ball drop. It's swinging at his hip. It's loose from his body, and it's very easy for those guys to knock it out. Even if you had 10-inch hands, you're still gonna have an issue in the NFL when you got some big 275-pound pass rusher hitting your hand. You're gonna fumble the football, but the 8.5-inch hands are only gonna increase that risk. But carriage of the football to me overall is the biggest concern in terms of the fumbling concern with Kenny Pickett. My NFL comp to Kenny Pickett is Jared Goff, where they both kind of had their struggles in their career because they don't necessarily have those elite physical tools. Also, see some Jimmy Garoppolo in Pickett's game, where they're not terrible quarterbacks, although Goff has not been particularly great in Detroit, but they really need that strong supporting cast around them to elevate their game. They're not going to be the leader. They're going to be more of that system guy and a hopefully run heavy offense that where that can be the focal point and the focus is the run game and some of the West Coast type stuff, the boots, play actions, rollouts, things like that. But Pickett just don't see the elite physical tools. And again, with some of the mechanical type stuff, carriage of the football, pocket presence that really kind of I can't be sold on Pickett as that franchise guy. Finally, number five, Desmond Ritter from Cincinnati. What I like about him the most is he completely turned around that Bearcats program. The year before he became their starter, they won 4 games. The year he became their starter, they won 11, and they won at least 9 games every single season, all 4 of his seasons. And the only reason why they won 9 games in 2020 was because it was a COVID shortened year. I think they went 9-1 2 years ago. And so they won, I think, 11 games, and then I want to say 13 games this past season and got into the college football playoff with Ritter, and they had a couple of tough losses. Really hung with Georgia 2 years ago, then had kind of a tough loss to Alabama this past season, but really put Cincinnati on the map in terms of becoming a marquee program that could hang and compete with the Power Five teams. Georgia in 2020, which was a last second loss on a 53-yard field goal by the Bulldogs. They beat Notre Dame this past year, and so you have to give any quarterback their props for being able to completely change the outlook and progression of a franchise in just a couple of years. Beyond that, Ritter as a quarterback himself, he's a good touch thrower. He knows when to take the air out of the football, knows when to, be able to throw a fastball, throw a changeup. And so I think that's overall impressive. He does show the occasional really good placement, downfield in terms of wheel routes and back shoulder throws and things like that. He's certainly mobile, tested extremely well, a 4.56 40, 36-inch vertical, 10.7 broad. Had a little bit of the pro style concepts working under center more than some of the other quarterbacks. His release looked good. I think he's a short-term memory guy that bounces back from mistakes and certainly has a ton of starting experience, a 4-year starter for the Bearcats, really has as much experience as anybody in this class. What I don't like is similar to Kenny Pickett. The arm strength overall is average. The velocity is average. But I can live with that. I don't, completely pass fail guys just based on their overall arm strength. His accuracy, though, Ritter's was less impressive than I thought it would be. I think his placement was still overall spotty, inconsistent, especially as he got outside the numbers. And you kind of saw the lack of the big arm, and that ball kind of began to die. Or you kind of just trying to push it a little bit more on those throws, the comebacks, the out routes, things like that, he would miss too often. And so accuracy to me is, I think, the number one trait you can have as a quarterback. And to me, Ritter lacked overall consistency and accuracy. He also has a thinner and slighter frame, a taller guy at 6'3 and a half. But while he is taller, he still had issues with batted passes. You watch the Alabama game this past year, he had four batted passes in that game, and they were just kind of swatting those passes right back at him throughout the day. While he did test really well as like a 90 something percentile type of athlete, and he's a fast guy. You watch the SMU game either this year or maybe 2020 at a 91-yard touchdown. The open field speed is nice, but he's not as dynamic as a Malik Willis, somebody that's going to really make you miss or make a ton of open field plays. And again, kind of a slighter frame that goes down a bit easier, has good speed, but to me is not a super dynamic runner overall. And also is a pretty heavy RPO based system. My NFL comp for Desmond Ritter is former Utah quarterback Alex Smith, and I say that for a couple of reasons. A, neither guy had a big arm. B, their frames are pretty similar. And C, what Alex Smith did for Utah in terms of turning that program around way back in the early 2000s, Ritter did for Cincinnati in 2021 and throughout his entire career with Cincinnati. So to me, Ritter, I don't see franchise caliber. I see a competent, good backup, mobile, experience, but somebody that doesn't really even scream starter to me. And so that's why I put him in that fifth spot and gave a third round grade to Desmond Ritter. So those are my overall thoughts on this quarterback class. Again, I'll put up the rankings one more time. Malik Willis, Matt Corral, Sam Howell, Kenny Pickett, and Desmond Ritter, the five quarterbacks. Pittsburgh, either having Mike Tomlin and or Kevin Colbert at their pro day this year. So the ones they've shown the most interest in. Again, check out the article on Steelers Depot. You can read the full text version where I have a couple of the notes on those guys as well, including their best traits, their overall grades, and things like that. So I'm sure some people will not like this video. I'm sure I'll get some things wrong. I'm sure whoever your favorite quarterback is or the team you root for, if it's not high enough on the list, you'll be upset about that. But these are my honest, independent rankings on this quarterback class. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I bet you guys have a ton of them. Please like this video and subscribe if you have not done so already. Thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.